Our next question is directed towards Dipankar Mukherjee, and it comes from Steve Hunnigs, Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Minnesota and the Dakotas. And he asks, as Indian Americans grow in number and prominence in the United States, how important is it for the community to retain our Indian ethnicity and identity?
I think to look at any culture to be fossilized in time, is a misnomer, because culture is constantly evolving and it's intergenerational, and so there is just like the way I would like to question that what is national. I just came from New York where we were a 13-member national group discussing what is national aesthetic. I mean, how do you define and articulate American aesthetic? Of course, the boys out there, the big old boys out there are a bit nervous because of the demographic shift. So this conversation is happening, a lot of money is being pumped into it. But the point is that, so is cultural identity sort of fossilized, or is it sort of, has it already arrived at? But there's constant innovation that is happening. Well, even 50 years from now, I mean, it's very interesting when I see Indians, my friends, who have gone to, say, the Trinidad and Tobago Islands, their practice of Hindu faith is so by the book and so distinctly specific compared to, what I have been exposed to, and I come from a family of priests. So I take those questions back, and I would ask some of my relatives that, how do you really see this? And they said, well, this is what our parents used to do. And so, whereas what has happened over here, it has evolved, it shifts. So 50 years from now, maybe there'll be a core, definitely at the core of Indianness. If there is one, I do not believe there is one Indianness at all. India has so many religions and so many cultures, and classical has always existed and always has been written about, and the folk has never been codified. You see, I mean, it's like history. People who get written about and who get studied by academics are really the people in power. But there's a huge tradition in Natya Shastra, if you see, written, not just the Sanskrit plays, but also plays written in the local language, in Prakrit, and many other local languages. And so I think to be able, Indianness will always remain as long as they practice their faith, their religion, their culture, their dance, their folk, their classical, but it will shift, because even now there cannot be a single definition. And the thing is that, to really discuss and frame Indian art on the basis of just the classical is wrong, because MTV is as much a part of Indian culture as it of the West. Good old Danny Boyle has, made a lot of representation of Slumdog Millionaire. And yes, I love Danny Boyle and the movie is great, but, is beyond that also. So every interpretation shifts the cultural and social, political identity of the culture. So yes, if 50 years from now, people will definitely remain Indian because they remain who they are, but it will constantly shift because it's not a monolith. And Indian culture is as defined and redefined depending on who gets the microphone.
Deborah McLaren, Executive Director of the United Nations Association of Minnesota. And she asks, can the U.S. and Indian foreign and economic policy truly be aligned while the U.S. tries to maintain the position of a world superpower?
Professor Rao helped me with this when he said the most difficult words are, I don't know. I struggle sometimes to deal with Minnesota public policy and with how we can do a good job here of maximizing opportunities and removing barriers. And I think I'm going to say, when it comes to U.S. foreign policy, that I'm not sure that I'm capable of intelligently commenting on that. So I think I'll pass.
Okay, I'm going to throw another one at you then. This one comes from Arvind Nayak, and it's directed towards the Commissioner and to Professor Rao. And Arvind asks, all trade and consumer science advancements are making the world more materialistic and less sensitive to the natural impact and to the environment.
Is there any effort or initiative in education or law to make life more simple and more close to the natural laws and more green?
It's a great question, and I think I started my remarks by saying the relationship between Minnesota and India and the Indian community, and the same would be true of the relationship between a place, government, and community, and any other place, government, and community is complex. And I do, because of the work I do, think most about commerce and business, but it's great that there are academics on this panel and artists on this panel, because those are also part of the debate and the discussion that goes well beyond business, and very honestly should go beyond government. Not all those decisions about what is important are going to be made in Hollywood or Bollywood or Washington or Delhi. Hopefully some of them are made around the kitchen table of every community, and after having been exposed to great art or great music or great culture or great debates. And I was delighted to hear that singing Kumbaya is not the only way to get, or not the best way to get collaboration, that sometimes cultural change and collaboration can be messy, it can take time. Good public policy can often be the same. I reminded of something Winston Churchill said when he was asked what he thought of democracy, and he said it's the worst possible way for human beings to govern themselves, except of course for everything else that's ever been tried. The same struggle as to how do individuals choose to make their lives simpler or closer to the earth or more natural is not a simple thing. And it's maybe a different discussion in the United States, where we have a GDP per capita that's pushing $50,000, and have neighbors like Haiti where the GDP per capita is $700, and because of the impacts that we were talking about of MTV now being global, or Univision or other things being global, we create the expectation of a US-like lifestyle in places that don't have those resources, and force people to give people the opportunity to make choices. Professor Rao said that the key element is education, and maybe it isn't just education to be commercially successful, but to be education to be culturally successful and humanly successful.
I teach at a business school, and most of my students come in looking for instruction on how to make more money. And underneath that principle is the concept of materialism. Fortunately, I'm an academic, and I can choose to study whatever I choose to study. And one of the things that my discipline, marketing, studies is anti-materialism, anti-consumerism. How do I influence consumers to do that which you might not ordinarily expect them to do? We know a lot about how to get people to choose Coke over Pepsi, or Pepsi over Coke, or Huggies over Pampers and the like. Can we use that wisdom to influence consumers to make better choices? So we, the academics, look at consumers not the way fishermen look at fish, which is something to be caught. We look at consumers the way marine biologists look at fish. These are interesting animals worthy of study in their own right. And when you study them from that standpoint, from a somewhat more quote-unquote scientific and objective standpoint, you realize that the same devices that you use to get people to choose Coke over Pepsi, or vice versa, are the devices you can get to have them choose sustainable technologies, for instance. And with that in mind, I'm going to do a little promotion. October 20th to 22nd, I will be chairing a conference on the demand side of sustainable technologies. 98% of federal dollars today go to the development of new green technologies, be it wind power, or light rail, or solar-powered submarines, or what have you. And these are all wonderful ideas, but they aren't worth a hill of beans if consumers don't adopt them. And we need to stop and ask, what's going on the demand side? Why is it that people in the United States do not subscribe to light rail the way they do in Europe? And once we focus our attention on things like that, carpooling, recycling, we know a lot about what makes people recycle, we can use that intelligence to inform policymakers in the White House, in the legislature, and in corporations, so that we change the direction of consumers' adoption of materials.